Hi, this is Ashley Castillo, and I'm here with another book review. In this case, I will be talking about The Last Call, The Rise and Fall of Prohibition. So, this book is a book, like the title says, about prohibition during the 1920s, when all of this occurred. So, during this time period, the United States had a very um, big consumption of alcohol. It was getting out of control, and nobody was really sober at the time. Kids were drinking too. Obviously, there was no restrictions on the age and on who could drink at the time. So everybody was drinking. It was very common, but obviously the fact that you aren't in a healthy stage is never um, a good thing. So, obviously, a group of people wanted prohibition, and the main people who wanted prohibition were the women of these men. So, these men many times were aggressive men. So, a lot of women at the time suffered from domestic violence, and it was, and also not only that, but maybe men weren't aggressive, but they would spend all of their money on saloons and on alcohol, and the table would be empty with nothing for the family to drink, to eat and drink, and women were just getting fed up with that, and by that they decided to lead the women, not the women's movement, but the temperance movement. So this was a very hard thing for women to do at the time, because at the time women did not have the right to vote. They had no rights. They were just men's property. So the fact that this occurred and that they were able to get through with prohibition was a very big success. It was a very big success. Accomplishment was what I was going to say, but success makes sense too. But yeah, I meant to say that this was a very big accomplishment for women, because it meant that their voice was being heard and that they could make a difference even if they didn't have the right to vote at the time. So it was, the temperance movement was mostly led by women, but it obviously there were men involved. Also, a lot of men were alcoholics at the time, like I mentioned, and they just had, they wanted to stop drinking, or they wanted to be able to control their drinking, and they just couldn't. So a lot of men at the time of voting, they actually voted for that reason, as well as for other reasons, because they thought that that was fine. But most for the most part, it was, the country was just a drunk country, and people just wanted that to change. But like I said, um, yeah, they wanted it to change, and including the drunks, like some of them wanted to stop drinking, and the only way for them to be able to stop drinking would have been um, through if they followed through with prohibition. So a lot of men voted for that, and it surprisingly passed through when a lot of people thought that it wouldn't, because of the fact that um, alcohol was a very big thing at the time. Everybody was doing it. It was, yeah. So once prohibition kicked in, it caused a lot of problems for the country. The main part was because people just could not be without alcohol. They were used to alcohol, they were used to being drunk all the time. So they weren't they did not know how to act without the alcohol. They had some time though that they could keep um alcohol stored. So when prohibition kicked in, they had alcohol stored for many years, and so they used that alcohol whenever they wanted alcohol during the prohibition time. But after prohibition, after prohibition kicked in, um, a lot of people that didn't have alcohol, or they had run out of alcohol, or whatever it was, that they just wanted more alcohol, a lot of the crime rate increased because they just wanted to get alcohol. So it began with smuggling. A lot of people were going to Canada and smuggling alcohol into the United States. They would get these big coats, and they would fill them with alcohol from the back, and it would be like strong alcohol, because if it was for beer, then they could just it wasn't very strong. They wanted the strong stuff that could really make an impact on them when they got alcohol. So it led a lot of it raised crime rates and illegal activity, smuggling, because of all that alcohol smuggling that Border Patrol came about. And it was organized in Canada to prevent these smuggling of alcohol. And not only that, but people were also faking. So alcohol was permitted for religious purposes. So a lot of people, because in the Jewish religion, you really don't need no type of education. You don't need no proof that you're Jewish. You don't really need anything. A lot of people were declaring themselves rabbis. So they were having access to alcohol. And they were selling it, they were making it a business, or they were simply just keeping it for themselves when really they weren't rabbis and they just wanted some type of alcohol. So this was definitely something that messed with people's morality. Yeah, this was a moral situation that it was really messing with, but that's just how important alcohol was to them, that even at the time that you would assume that people were much more conservative and much more religious, they still had that disrespect because alcohol. That I think that talking about that just demonstrates how important alcohol was at the time. Not only that, but doctors. Alcohol was permitted for pharmaceutical reasons. So doctors were selling alcohol prescriptions, and they were making a lot of money out of that. So a lot of people were getting alcohol from the pharmacy, and it just raised a lot of corruption. And that just raised a lot of corruption, and people just started to realize that, hey, we're in prohibition, but there's still alcohol out there and we can still get it. So we're going to do everything that we can to get it. So they did all of these things, and it, like I said, it really increased the crime rate. So then people started to realize, and the government started to realize, that, you know what, maybe we should take off prohibition, because honestly it is raising our crime rate. It is making it's just adding too much, and people are still getting it, so might as well legalize it. So they legalized alcohol. Alcohol again, and the prohibition era was over. So the prohibition only lasted for 13 years. So yeah, a lot of people had alcohol stored, and they still had it. But because of all of the high organized crime, the smuggling, they just decided to lift it, because it just that's what seemed right. So The Last Call was a book that explained all of this about prohibition, and it was a very well researched book. it was that they did a lot of research. The people that wrote it knew what they were going to be talking about, and to make the point clear, because it was these were things that were mentioned and things that actually happened. And it's very interesting to see how nowadays we're going through a similar debate, but in this case with marijuana. So, marijuana is a natural plant that is illegal in many areas of the United States. I think it's only 2 states that it's like completely illegal, and in most states it's legal to a certain extent when it comes to like medical purposes, and in just a few states it is legal as recreational use. So I feel like prohibition is important because it relates, even though with the high crime rates of marijuana, most people that go to jail go because of having a certain drug, and the most popular drug to have is marijuana. And it's just taking up space in our jails, and it is just creating a lot of crime that should not be occurring. So my views on this, you could compare the alcohol back then with the marijuana now, but marijuana doesn't have aggressive effects. Not that I know of personally. I'm not a smoker, and I don't know any smokers up close and personal. I know of people who do it, but I don't know anyone who actually does it. So I don't know how they react, and if anybody that is close to me that actually does it, I just haven't met them in that stage. So I really don't know much about it, and there's not much that I can say. But from what I've heard, marijuana isn't an aggressive substance. It's not as aggressive as alcohol. A lot of people even that are for marijuana are even against alcohol, and they're like, I don't understand why people drink. Like, they get aggressive, you forget what you did, and with marijuana none of that happens. So a lot of people are for marijuana are against alcohol because of all of that. So like I said, this is very important and relevant currently because marijuana is something that that is currently occurring, and there's the debate if it should be legalized or not. And personally, I say that it should be legalized because people are still going to be selling it. People out there sell marijuana. So the best way for the government to make a profit off of that is for them to sell it themselves and create their own revenue for it, instead of having independent people do it and not actually report it into their taxes. Even though they do, the people that usually sell it do put a lot of money into the economy by purchasing and spending their money here in the United States. It's still not as much as they would get if the United States sold the marijuana themselves. So personally, like I said, I don't know the exact effects of marijuana, but from what I know, it's not very dangerous. I feel like it should be legalized because it is already being sold. It is like prohibition. Like, even though it was prohibited back then, people still did it, and the government was losing at the end of the day. So I honestly do feel like it should be legalized, and also because I've heard that it has a lot of medical benefits to it. Honestly, me personally, I believe that if you're smoking it, smoking is just, in my opinion, it's just bad because it doesn't matter how pure the air. The fact that it's staying in your lungs, I just feel like that is bad. But if it's recreational use, like people smoke cigarettes, so I'm okay with that. But if you're a sick person and you need treatment, I would not recommend it smoked, because I feel like anything that goes into your lungs and doesn't exactly come out all the way is bad. But if you're using it as recreational use, I honestly don't really have a problem with it, because I don't feel like it causes as many problems as alcohol, which you have a lot of drunk driving. People like their lose consciousness. They forget what they did the next day. They get aggressive many times. And with marijuana, you don't really hear about those side effects. And also, it is said like it helps cure a lot of diseases. So if people are already using it, I believe that it should be legalized everywhere for in to better the government. And if it's not legalized as a recreational, at least sell the take out the I don't know exactly what the substance that gets you high in marijuana is called, but if they don't want to incorporate that, they can always extract it and just sell the plant itself for medical purposes. And those are my thoughts on the last call in prohibition and how it relates to nowadays. It was, like I said, a very informative book about prohibition, and it really relates a lot to what's going on nowadays with the issue, the controversy of if marijuana should be legalized or not. So I hope that you enjoyed my little short book review and my my little reflective on how it relates to now, and thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.